really is the year of sauna at Finlandia Foundation. And in that vein, I'm so thankful and glad to introduce our 2025 Lecturer of the Year at Finlandia Foundation, who's here to moderate today's conversation with our expert guest. Be on the lookout. Eero might be at a local FFN affiliate near you this year. He's on the road to talk about sauna. So to get us started, please welcome Eero Kilpi, president of the Finlandia Foundation New York Metropolitan Chapter, co-host of the Upper Bench podcast, and former president of the North American Sauna Society. So Eero, tervetuloa. Mennään nyt sauna, eikö niin?
Kyllä, kiitos kovasti. Yes, tack så mycket. Det ska vi göra. Thank you so much. That's what we're gonna do. So thanks, Tommy, and I just let me just start. Like Tommy said, so I'm the lecturer of the year for Finlandia Foundation National, and I actually just took a red eye from Portland, Oregon. So I'm at my brightest. I slept well on the plane on my way over, but it was a great trip. As you know, the one trip that before I did, I went to Hancock, Michigan, where I actually met Minna and Tommy and a lot of other great folks. So it's a great year for me, and it's fulfilled with all things sauna. I want to take this opportunity now to start with thanking Finlandia Foundation National for all the great work they've done. Jessica in the office, Mia, and particularly Tommy and Minea have been a great help along the way, and this really I've been involved with all of those 4 years of these sauna weeks, and it's getting better as also the sauna is getting better day by day in North America. But I'm honored to be obviously here. Mikkel is our star, as he's supposed to be. I'm honored to be here with Mikkel. Today we are kind of I've known you, Mikkel. I think I've known of you at least 20 years, and I've known you maybe 15 years probably.
Okay.
Somewhere there, I would assume, and I really admire what you have done. And what you have done is you wrote that you're a photographer. That's your profession basically, and you wrote that book, Sweat, 1978, and it's on its second edition now or third, I can't remember, but it was way sold out. It's like it was like a collector's item, item, at least the first version has been. So it's been long out of print. And then you organized, and this I feel bad about, the 2014 summit in San Francisco, where I never came. And my apologies still once again, I missed a great opportunity. And now you have that 7-series TV show, The Global Art of Sweat Bathing, and you went to Finland. You talk about Alfkus, Banya in Russia, Japan, Turkey, Norway, and the Burning Man. But anyway, so you are the man when it comes to the face of sweat bathing, and today you're going to be talking about sauna or sweat bathing in a global context, about your own journey, if I understood right, and then you will also talk about the sauna aid. And just to let the people know, I try to keep an eye on the chat. And we have like maybe 300 posts there, so it's going to be difficult. But post your questions there when you have questions to Mikkel, and I try to convey those questions. Then, Mikkel, great to see you.
Eero, thank you so much. Really appreciate your intro. I'm honored to be here with you, and Tommy and the rest of you at the Finlandia Foundation. What a week. I watched every one of the sessions. I didn't miss one, and they were all so interesting. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still have a lot to learn. Thank you so much for organizing this week, and I just can't say how happy I am to be here right now with all of you. So I'd like to go ahead and jump into my presentation, which is a keynote presentation. I'm going to have to share my screen to do that. And let's go ahead and hope that this all works smoothly. So far, so good. And all right. So are we good? Can we see the slides now? Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So this is my talk. I'm going to start off with an introduction of myself, and then I want to break this into three parts. There'll be the first part, which is a global view of sauna and sweat bathing culture around the world. And then part two, the physical, social, and spiritual aspects of sweat bathing. I call it the three pillars of sustainability. And I think it's really important that people understand that we're working with an incredible explosion in interest in bathing culture right now, but it's very fragile. And we need to keep in mind what makes it sustainable. And in part three of my talk, I want to talk about something that's so dear to my heart right now, probably the most important thing I'm doing in this space, and that's the Sauna 8 initiative. So let's start away. I'm going to start off by just apologizing, I guess. I'm not Finnish. I feel, all week I've seen the wonderful Finnish stories and Finns talking, and I see a lot of Finnish names popping up here. I'm actually Norwegian American, and my father kind of came from Norway, and I grew up here in the East Bay in California. San Francisco Bay Area. And my father in the 60s built something called the Bastu. And the Bastu was the Norwegian sweat bath. And back in the 60s, the Finnish sauna was just starting to gain popularity in America. But we had our Bastu, which was what I was familiar with. So this is my culture, the Norwegian culture. And I knew it was similar to the Finnish sauna, but it was Norwegian. And so I apologize since I'm going to be coming from a little bit different perspective here, not being 100% Finnish myself. Although I do have a few drops of Finnish DNA. I discovered that when I did 23andMe. So 50 years ago, I graduated from college, yeah, a long time ago, a degree in photojournalism, and I started working on my first book. And it was a small step, and I had no idea that it would take on the huge global proportion that it eventually did. I moved to Finland to do my research on Vastu sauna, and with every day I became aware that the Finnish style of bathing and my own Vastu were just the tip of the iceberg. There were similar types of baths with different names and styles and histories. They were common all over the world. So I lived in Finland. I did my research there. I found out what a sweat bath is. I learned what a sauna was, but I also learned that a sweat bath is any heated enclosed space specifically designed for heating the body and inducing sweat. And all the sweat baths have their own name, unique history, rituals, architecture, and passionate devotees, which I'll get into later. So these are some of the people I really want to call out. Uh, People that when I was living in Finland in the 70s were my friends. They're my heroes. Matti Vuorinjärvi on the right wrote an amazing book called Sauna Kautta Sauna Through the Ages. It was published in the 60s, and he really blew open the door on sweat bathing culture around the world and exposed all the different types of sweat baths, all in Finnish. But I got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Martti. He became a friend, and he's just somebody whose shoulders I stand on. I also got to know Immeri Virjuri, was a daughter of H.J. Virjuri. He's the founder of the modern Finnish sauna in the 1940s, and wrote the book that you see there. He had passed away by the time I got to Helsinki, but Immeri became one of my closest friends, and I got to know a lot about the history of her father through her. On the upper left, Professor Harold Tidd was the president of the Finnish Sauna Society back in those days, and became a friend and became a huge supporter of what I was trying to do by introducing sauna in the context of sweat bathing culture around the world. And finally, Professor Niilo Tieri, who was the president of Castor, one of the oldest sauna manufacturers, and the maker of this wonderful tent sauna that you see here that I had in my backyard for years in San Francisco. And then I'm not going to go through every one of these people, but these were my Finnish American heroes. So when I did the research here, from the Finnish point of view, these were the people that I really connected with. These are some of the, the long-standing people in the Finnish community, all the way from Duluth to Oregon, San Francisco, and New Jersey. And this is all back in the 60s and the 70s. So in Finland, when I was doing all this research, I got the information like, in my head that this was a big, big subject. But then suddenly I had this epiphany that no one had really gone around the globe and connected all the dots in a contemporary way. So I had this idea that I would use Finland as my base and go to all the different sweat bath cultures and connect the dots. And out of that adventure, that journey, whatever you want to call it, came the book Sweat, which was published in 1978 by Capra Press. And then the book is out of print, as Eero said. I put the book, much of the material is for free on the web in my website. And you can also get an ebook version, but the book itself, the hard copy, is hard to find. I wish I had more copies of it to be able to sell because it goes for several $100s. I don't see a penny of that, but that's another story. And then a few years ago, the Sweat book was turned into a documentary series, 7 episodes that have just been released last month on various streaming services by Braves Run Productions. They're also the producer of the Sauna channel. I suggest you check both of those out. I think we're going to post a link here shortly. So I want to show just a 2-minute clip. It's a trailer for the Perfect Sweat series. It's very short, but it'll give you an idea of what the series is about. And I encourage you to check the series out because you're going to learn a lot about sweat.
For thousands of years, humans have harnessed the power of fire and steam to make sweat and heal mind, body, and soul. I'm Mikkel Aaland. In the 1970s, I traveled around the globe, documenting ancient sweat bathing traditions from my book, Sweat. That was then. What's happening now? I've teamed up with local guides in different countries in search of the perfect sweat. What I'm finding is an explosive rebirth of this healing communal practice.
It's about building new communities.
Join us as we explore the newest, oldest, biggest, smallest, funkiest saunas, banyas, hammam, badstuas, mushiburus, and steam baths.
They start beating you, so you're going crazy from the first second.
This is a cold place. I need a sauna in my house, and it has to be a sauna here.
Along the way, we'll meet passionate devotees, see some incredible architecture, join stunning rituals, and find out how sweat bathing makes the world a better place. Join us in this amazing adventure in search of the perfect sweat.
Okay, so that's Perfect Sweat. You can check that out. I hope you enjoyed the series. I totally enjoyed working on it, and my co-hosts are amazing people. So this is a question that always comes up, is the origin of the sweat bath. When did all this start? And I know in my research, I find archaeological and written information that goes back a few thousand years, but my intuition, my feeling is that this is something that goes back to the beginning of human history, and it probably started when we, as a species, evolved our sweating capability. We have an amazing capacity to sweat, which really differentiates ourselves from other primates and other mammals, for example. But you combine that with the harnessing of fire, and you get people sitting around a hot fire and sweat pouring out of their skin, and they start to feel good, and they start telling stories, and they start to dance, and they write on the wall. And I think that's where we have the beginning of a sweat bath. So it's going to be really hard to prove this theory of mine, but it really makes sense. So over time, the sweat bath evolved with its own unique names, history, rituals, architecture, passionate devotees. And so, for example, in the Middle East, the sweat bath is known as the hammam, which means spreader of warmth. In the West, the hammam has been mostly known as the Turkish bath. So this hammam is found all over the Middle East. We filmed mostly in Turkey for the Perfect Sweat episode on the hammam, but you can find these hammams all over the Middle East. They're also becoming really popular in North America, and I could give a shout out to some of the people in Vancouver and in Portland that are creating hammams, public hammams for Americans. So the hammam is spreading around the globe. It's got a lot of advantages and a lot of things people like. The hammam is a descendant of the giant Roman thermae. This is probably one of the greatest bathing cultures the world, if not Europe, has ever seen. These sweat baths could accommodate thousands of people at once, and they were all over. Wherever the Romans went, they put up the thermae. This is the ruins just outside of Rome, filming one of the baths there. As I said, anytime you found a Roman settlement, you found the thermae, or the sweat bath of the Romans. So the Russians also have their form of the sweat bath. That's known as the banya, or for example, Ukraine, the laznia. It's a Slavic type of bathing that's very similar to the sauna, but it has its own flavor, if I will. And this is shooting the Russian episode in St. Petersburg. The Russian passion, or the Slavic passion for the sweat bath, for the banya, is unparalleled. It's an incredible passion around their form of the bath. And I've said this before, but there's a lot of Slavs in the world who speak of the banya and not so much the sauna. So it's a real passionate form of bathing by these people. This was in a black banya in St. Petersburg, a banya treatment outside Moscow. And the Russian banya, as I said, is spreading also all over the globe. In Italy, but in North America, there's banyas all over New York, here in San Francisco. The banya is very popular, especially as a public bath. The sweat bath was found in North America with the native tribes. And this was something that when the original pilgrims came over to America, they were kind of shunned by the Native Americans because they smelled so bad. They didn't have a bathing culture at that time. And the Native Americans, of course, did with the sweat house. And they were appalled by the hygiene of the early American settlers. But the sweat lodge was found all over North America. And then you get down south in the Mexican Central America region. It's the Temescal, and this is the ancient Mayan and Aztec sweat bath. This has been documented to be thousands of years old. And nowadays, this was in the 70s, I found the Temescals in the small towns, small villages. But now I just recently went back in Tepoztlan, and this is just south of Mexico City, and every corner in that town had a public Temescal. And you can see just a few of them on the left, and then on the right, an example of the Temescal. So this is becoming hugely popular now in Mexico, the Temescal. And in Japan and Korea, they have many types of the sweat bath called the kamaburo, mushiburo. In Korea, it's a jinjamam. And it's a little bit different way of heating. You can see the fire on the left. It's like a kiln. It gets really hot. I mean, the one that I'm showing here was about 100, I think it was 160 Celsius, unbelievably hot. but an amazing experience. Now, this is one I wish we had a whole session to talk about, the Irish sweat house. I'm just now getting more in tune with it. It's Tingan is the Celtic word for it, and this is again another ancient sweat bath of the Irish folk. And just recently, I went back to Ireland and spent a week with Rosanna Cooney, who's a journalist who's just now finishing a comprehensive book on Irish sweat houses, coming out this spring. And we went all over Northwest Ireland, checking out different sweat houses, Irish sweat houses that weren't in use today, but they are certainly informing a really renaissance of sweat culture in Ireland today. They called the period after the Irish famine in the 19th century the Great Forgetting, and sweat house use was forgotten. It was part of the Great Forgetting, and now we have what I call the Great Remembering. And the Great Remembering is happening all over Ireland, and that culture is coming back. Norway, Sweden, Denmark all had their own form. As I mentioned, the Badstue, this is in Norway. Different architecture than the Finnish style of sauna. It has its own flavor. Again, each culture brings in its own ingredients for the sweat bath. And then in the Baltics, Latvia, Lithuania, it's the Pirts. This is a book on Pirts by two of the kind of leaders in the Pirts world, Rimas and Beruta, and a Latvian Pirts Master Mata, who's another wonderful person involved with spreading Pirts culture. And now this is, we come right to probably the big, most important sweat bath of all, and that's the Finnish sauna. And I'm going to have to jump in and give it a nod to the Estonian sauna, because that's becoming incredibly popular now as well. When I wrote the book in the 70s, it was the Finnish sauna that everybody talked about. Estonia wasn't quite as it was behind the Iron Curtain, but now Estonia has really come forward with its claim on the sweat bathing culture vis-a-vis the sauna. So I don't need to spend too much time on this. This is the Finnish sauna. We've spent all week, wonderful week, talking about the sauna. Many people have brought up the smoke sauna, which is, I guess you call it the Cadillac of sauna. It's if you've never experienced one, you really have to kind of set a standard for what a sauna can be. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on what the sauna is, because I think most of you know the sauna. Now, instead of wood-burning stoves, you can have electric stoves and stoves with chimneys, and we could go into there's a whole variety of sauna heaters. But I think it's really important to remember that what differentiates the sauna, not only because of the culture around it, but it's usually wood, and it's usually always has a stove with rocks that accommodate water on the rocks. You can just say, in its most basic level, it's that. And then, of course, you can get into all the variations and details, and like anything, you can, as you learn more, you get more sophisticated and you find what you like. But the sauna is really probably one of the most known sweat baths around the globe today. Okay, now this is something that's really important to me, and I talk about this all the time, and that's what holds up what makes a bathing culture last. Why are certain bathing cultures prevalent or exist over time, and others don't? And I've come up with this image of three pillars, and one of them being the spiritual, the other the social, and the physical. And these are aspects of the bath that are very, very unusual to have a human activity that holds those three aspects under one roof, which the sweat bath does. Under one roof, you can have a spiritual, social, and a physical side. But if you start to take down one of these pillars, the bathing popularity diminishes. It falls apart. And I've seen this in my research, which goes back thousands of years. During the Middle Ages, for example, during the plagues, the physical side, people didn't feel safe. They got sick. That pillar collapsed, and a lot of the bathing cultures collapsed as well. And there were other things going on, but that was part of it. I feel very strongly that the spiritual is something that holds together the popularity of a bath. Let me break these down a little bit more by going into them individually. So when I talk about the spiritual, this is this could be the hardest one to describe because I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about an attitude that happens, that occurs, that you bring to, or that you get from the sweat bath. So the first thing you have to remember is that when you go into a sweat bath, you're heating your body, you're transforming your body. Heat transforms, fire transforms, anything it touches. Think about food, water, anything that heat hits will transform. It does the same thing with our body, and you can almost say it's a reenacting creation itself, symbolically merging body and fire. So there's this amazing transformation that occurs just by going into some heated space. You go from the physical to the cosmic, you reconnect with nature itself. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about spiritual. Then when you throw the rocks into the equation, when you have the transfer of the power of fire into rocks, the rocks now become a central part of this spiritual experience. And the Native Americans sweat lodge, they call the stones grandfather. They symbolize endurance and treating them with great reverence. So then the water that's thrown on the rocks, oftentimes there is a water component or a steam component. And that's also transferring this power of fire and stone into the air, thuluila, as the Finns call it. The Russians have another name for the steam, slocumpadam, light steam. But there's a lot of appreciation for steam. So the hammams are always built near a mosque. So bathing with purpose, spiritual intent, transforms the routine cleansing into something extraordinary and profound. So in Finland, we have this adage, many of you heard, behave as you would in the sauna, as you behave in the sauna as you would in a church. I heard the same thing from a Navajo medicine man before I entered a Native American sweat lodge. He said, act like you would in your white man's church, with respect. This is a shamanistic ceremony at a swamp sauna in central Finland. So there are a lot of ceremonies around the Finnish style of sweat bathing. Now, social sweating, the social side is also very important. Another pillar that holds it up. And so I personally have had some of the most meaningful conversations with strangers in the sauna or sweat bath. Intimate, clothing-free, it fosters unique connections, dissolves barriers, reveals a shared sense of humanity. And now we have some science. We have to get science in here. And MRI studies show that feelings heard, when someone feels heard, they change the brain. They change the brain similarly to medication. So communal baths may not replace therapy, but they foster healing and connection in a powerful ways. And we heard the other day, we heard Ashley Mason talking about depression and sauna, how there's a correlation between those two and how depression can be alleviated with heat therapies. Okay, the physical. I'm gonna have to zoom through the physical here because although for many people this is really important, at the end of the day, Edo and I talked about this at the beginning. We feel good. I mean, do we need anything more? Well, the reality is that people like to know more because they like to know that their feelings are supported by science. So the fact is that there's a lot of very special physical things that happen. Just the fact that we can sweat and that we sweat in these sweat baths is really important to understand that the sweating, without our ability to sweat, we wouldn't be able to live in as many diverse environments, from deserts to tundras. So sweating itself and activating sweating is really important. Sitting in a sweat bath could be the most vigorous activity you have all day. Creates an artificial fever, activates all your organs. Your body's cleansed from the inside out through sweat. And then I'm just going to zoom through some of these benefits. I think a lot of people know about these. Skin benefits, improves skin health. There are studies that show that detoxification does occur. I want to be careful how I use that, but there are studies that some heavy metals, copper, zinc, mercury, are excreted through sweat that aren't secreted through the kidney. This is well established, improved cardiovascular health, pain relief, muscle relaxation, stress reduction. Well, this is how we don't need studies to show, but there are studies that show that heat relaxes the muscles and reduces the levels of cortisol, a stress hormone. Improved mental health. Regular sauna uses, we talked about this. This is Ashley's work, reduces the risk of depression, anxiety. This is, again, something very interesting. More research is probably needed on this, but it increases the production of white blood cells and helps boost the immune system. Respiratory function, helps to clear congestion, improve breathing. Longevity, there's some evidence to suggest that regular sauna use is associated with reduced risk of all-cause mortality. This means that people who use sauna regularly may have a lower risk of dying from various causes. Neurological benefits, and so on and so forth. So the physicals, it's an important part, and this is something I mentioned earlier when I talk about the 3 pillars. So if you break down any one of these pillars, if you don't have a spiritual attitude towards the bath, or if that's not a component, you lose respect, and people don't feel so safe. They lose the magic that happens. The social, if it's not a social space, if you're by yourself, it doesn't give you all the other benefits that happen when you do a social bathing. And the physical, well, the physical, if tomorrow suddenly somebody said, heat is bad for you, or, you'll get cancer from it, the bathing popularity is gonna really diminish. And I notice that with alcohol now, that there's studies that are coming out. I'm not sure I believe all of them, that say alcohol, any kind of alcohol, is bad for you. And well, what's happening is alcohol sales are plummeting. So we have to be really careful in this bathing community that we nurture these 3 things: the spiritual, the social, and the physical. We got to keep those in mind whenever we work together to advance our interest in this bathing culture. And okay, so now I'm zooming through that, and I don't really wish I had some more time, but this is probably one of the most important things that I wanted to talk about today, and this is Sauna Aid. And Sauna Aid is after being involved with this for over 50 years, this is probably the thing I'm the most excited about. And it came about 3 years ago when the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and there was a lot of people that wanted to do something to help. And it became clear that working with the International Sauna Association, we could bring together a bunch of like-minded people and help out with Ukraine through sauna, through the bath. And so this activity, the people getting together, ended up creating something called Sauna Aid. Sauna Aid is really kind of standing on the shoulders of something that happened during the Fukushima earthquake back in Japan, when the Japanese Sauna Association brought in tent saunas to help people either detoxify from the radiation or just to get warmth, because a lot of the homes were destroyed and they didn't have places to get warm. So the Japanese started this idea, and we've now really taken it much farther. We've created a 501c3 entity. It's a foundation, nonprofit, tax exempt. We've been very involved with Ukraine. We started off by sending a specially designed tent sauna down to the Kharkiv area. And then we followed up. This is the tent that was designed in Finland and then shipped down to Kharkiv. And we followed up with a Pixla container sauna. We brought that in. And recently, the sauna that was donated by the Therme group, we delivered to Sarisabu, to a sports center there for kids. Very well received, very popular. This is another sauna that we had donated by the Bathhouse of London, delivered to the Kherson region of Ukraine. This one was in association with the Japan Spa Association, and Harvia donated stoves, and donated stoves, and we sent these down to the Kupiansk region of Ukraine that had been really devastated by the war. Now we've partnered up with the Ukrainian charity fund Repower, providing sauna support for their psychological rehabilitation programs. We were in Denmark with Jan Bach, brought his mobile sauna into one of those programs. We spent a week helping people there with the sauna. We've been in cooperation with Bast Tent Sauna of Sweden, delivering tent saunas to other events, Repower events, and they've also donated tent saunas to Ukraine directly. They're trying to raise money to help build a beach sauna on a beach near Kharkiv, and this is a diagram put together, planned by Wendy Lua, one of our founding members. She's an architect, amazing architect. We're just trying to raise money to make this happen. Right now, we're in the middle of this. We've coordinated delivery of several overland from Portland sauna wood burning tent saunas to be used, hopefully with the home fire stations for firefighters who have been exposed to extreme psychological and physiological stress fighting the fires in LA. So we just had, I think, 4 of those delivered up here in the Bay Area. Tomorrow in London, we're having a Sauna Aid fundraiser. So if you're in London, please come on by. We're cooperating with this Sauna Sundays, which is an initiative by Alchemy Springs, a public bathhouse here in San Francisco, trying to get the Sauna Sunday established with all public bathhouses. And we're piggybacking Sauna Aid, saying this is a good time to throw in a donation to Sauna Aid. So a lot of things going on with Sauna Aid. Please check out our website. I've only touched the surface on it. You can donate. There's a lot of ways you can help, but please help us out. We're doing good things, and we really want to keep doing them. Okay, so I see we're running up. I'm running up against the clock, and I guess not Risto, Ero, should I stop sharing and come back over to you now?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes. Stop sharing, and we're gonna start talking, and like Tommy has and many other people has pointed. So if and when you have questions, use the Q&A. So we will try to Mikkel first and me in second. We try to answer your questions if you have them. And I just want to, there's one before we even start talking. There was one that I noticed. I don't know if somebody answered it, but somebody asked about code and viruses and sauna. So I just want to point out that sauna does not, any other type of sweat bath doesn't cure anything. So don't think that you're gonna be cured of something. And if there's a virus, if there's a virus in your skin and you go to sauna, the sauna will kill that virus. But if it gets into your system, you're just gonna get, it's gonna get worse probably. So don't play with that. Now, my first question is what's your kind of, Mikkel, what's your favorite? Is there people ask me this and I can't answer. What's your favorite form of sweat bathing? What is, in the perfect world, what are you gonna do?
You're gonna put me right on the spot right away. Oh, thank you. I guess this is a cop out, but the perfect sweat for me is the last one I just took. So the last one I took would have been at the Dolphin Club. I'm a member of the Dolphin Club here in San Francisco, and we're cold water swimmers, and we have this wonderful club that's open to the public, and we have a beautiful sauna with a Harvia stove that I go in and I warm up and I go into the icy bay and swim, and then I go back into this great sauna filled with really amazing people. and I took one yesterday, so that would have been the best one. I mean,
Mm,
but okay, that's a little bit of a cop out. What this gives me a chance to say that I think that why it's so important to understand all the different cultures and to understand all the different forms of the sweat bath is because you start to see what you like and what you don't like. I know a lot of people that really don't like the high heat of the Nordic baths.
mm,
They really are more comfortable in maybe a steam bath or a hammam type environment. And I want to get people in sweating. I don't
mm,
want people to say, "Oh, it's too hot, I'm not going to do it." So I just want the people to understand that there's a lot of ways they can interact with this sweat world that we're in.
mm.
And just get to know the world of sweat bathing, get to know and figure out what you like. Now, you may very well like the super hot and the super cold, but not everybody does. So I just want
That's
to
true.
open up people's mind.
And yeah, that's true. And actually, the Upper Bench did an episode with Dr. Mark Timmerman way back, and I asked that specific question, like it's like there are different forms of heat therapy. So what is better than the other? And his answer was basically all kind of sweating is good. So that's kind of the starting point right there. So that's how it worked. Um,
Brilliant.
the before we go to the questions that people are posing here, I try to, like, I'm a little bit Norwegian or you're a little bit Finnish, but you're more open-minded than I am. But it's like now it's we know that this community, this social sauna is a big thing now, and there's a lot of this kind of pre-programmed activity, and it's a learning process for me because I like to control everything. I like to, the heating and the steam and the brakes and everything. So it's maybe I'm too old for this, but where do you? This is also kind of an unfair question, but we don't have a crystal ball. But where does this sweat bathing? Where is it going?
Whoa, you just keep giving me these fastballs. Um, where's it going? I have to say I watched this over 50 years now, and I can't say how exciting of a space we're in now. It's people, I think this idea, the social side is a really important part, especially for the younger people. This
Yeah.
is, we're finding this is they're using them instead of bars. They're going to,
Mm,
events, saunas and sweat houses and banyas and it's so healthy. And I think it's such a good thing, even though you and I, being older, may not enjoy it on that level. For young people, it's absolutely thrilling. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of these Aufguss ceremonies. Those are incredibly social. They're filled with 200, 300 naked people in one bath watching these incredible performances. So but then there's the other side too. I have a sauna in my home or bastu in my home in Norway, and I can just sit there by myself and be really happy. Even though you think it's lonely, but I'm actually never alone. I have my memories, I have my ancestors I talk to. So there's a whole variety. I think it's what I'm trying to say is that there's a space for everybody, but it's really
mm,
important to keep those three things that I talk about in mind. And if you for example, if people don't feel safe in the sauna, in these social settings, if you don't feel safe, you take away a pillar, and if people don't feel that it's healthy, you take another pillar. The spiritual side gives them it instills some sense of respect, which I also think is really important.
mm.
Those are the things I have. That's what I have to say about it. It's plenty of room for all kinds of variety of experiences in the sweat.
I've got one point before we start looking at these questions. I now, because I'm traveling the country and talking about saunas, so I have this one slide that shows it doesn't exist anymore, but the best sauna that I ever had was my parents' sauna in the Finnish archipelago. and it's a sauna by the water. There's a little pier, and there's the natural cold plunge, and then there's this area outside where you can relax between the rounds and everything. And I try to be funny, which I almost never succeed to be, but it's like I'm explaining that this is a sauna at its natural habitat. So and inside there's it's the hot room, and now you can take the hot room and take it anywhere. But you have to understand that when you take that sauna from its natural habitat, it's going to be some level of compromising, and if you understand that compromising, then it's going to take you far. Anyway, so there's a question: how often is considered regular sauna use?
I'm not, I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe, but I know I go anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, and that's just my thing. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any, it's individual, and again, we can't be prescribing it, but that's just the way I do it. I need it. It's so important to my life.
We back in Finland, I've been in New York for years, but back in Finland, like at least once a week was the norm. At least once a week, and if you have time and if you have a chance, do it more often. So, next question: how long is a good session length? And that's kind of a tricky question right there, also.
Yeah, they're all tricky questions. Thanks, Edo. So the length of time you spend in the sauna, again, individual. It's going to depend on your capacity to handle heat. Also on the heat, how hot it is. Some people like really, really hot, kind of a super hot heat, and then a shorter duration followed by a quick plunge in cold, and then back in the heat. So they have this back and forth going, this contrast therapy. Other people just like the lower temperature. They want to hang out, relax. The hammam is a lower temperature, higher humidity, so it tends to be more sensuous in the sense that you're not rushing anything. Everything is much calmer and quieter. The hammam has oftentimes scrubbing involved, and people take all day long in the hammam, so it's a much more sensuous experience, I think. Sensuous in that in a different way, I should say. So I would just say you find what works best for you. And as we get older, it used to be when I was in the 70s at the Sauna Society, hanging out there, the men were younger and they were calling for 100 degrees or 212 Fahrenheit or hotter, and they were like, wow, having competitions about the heat. Well, guess what? As you get older, that temperature requirement goes down because you just don't need the heat or want the heat as much. So anyway, the point is, find what's comfortable for you. Don't let somebody tell you how to do it. Find out for yourself what works. That's so important. Listen to your body.
And yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of a difficult thing to listen to a body if you're new to this thing, but you will eventually the body will tell you what to do. Obviously, saunas as businesses, they do have time constraints, and it can be a kind of a compromise. But I think the most important thing is the contrast. The contrast, and it's not one and done. One and done is not bathing per se. It's you have to do contrast heat therapy, it's multiple rounds. And then Johanna here is asking, will there be a list or link to community saunas in the United States or any country so people can experience for themselves? There are already many lists, and there will be many more. And there will be yet another list by North American Sauna Society eventually. So we're going to have sauna ambassadors. We're going to have boots in the ground so that you can compare, beforehand you go to an establishment, what it's going to offer you, and then it's your own choice, what you want. And now, Mikkel, for you,
Yeah.
kind of the same kind of questions that I started with. Of all the saunas you've experienced in the world, is there one that is the most memorable for you?
I mean, I've had so many memorable experiences. I mean, with the Navajo medicine man in New Mexico was extraordinary. I did an Irish sweat ceremony. I mean, I think the ones that are most memorable are the ones that have these kind of deep spiritual connection to them. And, I've taken a lot of really nice smoke saunas that are just pleasurable. They feel so, really good. There's something about the smoke sauna that the heat radiate from all around, and But I think it really there's so many experiences that I'm so blessed. I mean, I've spent 50 years working on the book, working on the series. Now with Sauna Aid, being in saunas with the Ukrainians. I made 3 trips into Ukraine myself personally, delivering saunas and watching people transform from being totally stressed out and overwhelmed by the war, and in the sauna they become human again. I mean, those moments are just unbelievable to me. The power of the heat, the power of what we're doing to bring people back to who they are and what they are and make us human again. So those moments in Ukraine are really special to me. Absolutely.
Here, here. Uh, there's a question. I live in a small townhouse with very little property. I'd like to have a sauna, but space is very limited. Other than an infrared cabin, what other types of sauna would you recommend for a small home? We don't have public saunas nearby.
It, so one of my favorite sayings by Professor Thierry back in the 70s, he used to say that the point is not to have the best sauna on the block, but get the block into the sauna. So a few years ago, several years ago, I live in a condominium in San Francisco, and we tried to get a sauna built on as part of our condominium. And there was resistance. We couldn't get it to happen. Um, Very disappointed. This is before I joined the Dolphin Club. Well, I started working with the community to put a sauna at the public pool down the block. And that had never been done before. But we convinced the city of San Francisco to put in a sauna in the public pool. And guess what? Everybody uses that sauna now. It's one of the most popular
Whoa.
to the neighborhood. So I would suggest a little community activity, activism, and create some kind of a community space where you can share with your neighbors. And that's my suggestion. It worked for us.
That's a perfect suggestion. Very good answer. What's your favorite after sauna beverage and food?
Oh God, I love beer.
Me
Lord.
too.
Oh my God.
And sausage,
Yeah,
sausage.
I can do
That's
that in Finland. I love the sausages there. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Uh,
good.
and then there's yeah, but this is kind of an easy question for a Finnish and Norwegian. What age is the best to initiate children in a sauna?
Well, we took our daughters when they were very young. I mean, they were, toddlers, and the way to do it is, obviously their sweat glands are not as well developed, so you don't want to expose them to the higher benches. But in any good sauna, you have a good differentiation, between the benches, and on the floor, it's relatively cool. So we would put a big bucket of water, and they would have the best time ever playing around with that water. And they were really young. I mean, 1 year at least. I mean, maybe even younger. I don't remember. We took them as soon as we could, and
Yeah.
and now they're, they love sauna. They love bathing. Yeah.
I did the same with my kids, and I was brought into sauna. Obviously don't know, but I was less than a year old for sure. For
Mm.
sure, I was less than a year. But like you said, it's like you have to work on a kid's terms. So do you like it hotter the more sessions you do? That's kind of a tricky question also.
Well, do I like it hotter? I, you know, I think we talked about heat earlier. It really depends. There's sometimes when I really want it super hot, especially if I've come out of the icy bay water.
Yeah.
Other times I don't like the temperature as much because I really want to just relax and I just kick back and spend longer duration. So you can either get this really super fast, heat that heats your body up quickly, or you can get a similar effect by a lower temperature but longer duration in the sauna. It
Yeah.
really depends how you feel. I'm so sorry because I'm not one to give really hard, this you need to do. I'm the more of the guy like, figure it out, see what
Yeah.
feels right. And don't let somebody tell you what to do. That's over and over again. I have to emphasize that you find your own way on this.
Yes, yes, I agree 100%. 100%. So there's also a question. Some sauna purists, quote unquote, insist that ideally one takes breaks from the hot room to cool off, including rinsing or rolling in the snow. Are the latter two a tradition in Finland? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
If there's snow, there's definitely and it's as important what happens outside the hot room is that happens inside the hot room. Maybe more important.
I, I,
Okay.
I love the contrast as well, Edo. That's really important to me.
Doesn't Finland have an old history of some women delivering babies in saunas? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
It's I don't think that it happens today,
No.
but that much. It's kind of a thing. My dear friend Norm asks, what is the rule of 200, humidity and temp? So
200, I guess 200 is temperature, and
yeah,
then
that's kind of the humidity and temperature. So if say if the temperature is 200, basically it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the humidity is 10%. If the temperature is 180 degrees Fahrenheit, the humidity is 20%. I don't know if it's totally, if it's totally accurate, but that is the theory of how it works. But it depends. It depends also on the heater. But the hotter the hotter the sauna is, the less humidity there is. But now I'm seeing Tommy, which kind of means that at least I should, shut up. But
Well, I think we could.
we're going over here. Sorry, Tommy.
It's not a problem. The conversation could go actually well beyond the time, which is why we've got Sauna Week 2026 right on the horizon. It'll be here before you know it. But I want to thank you, Mikkel, for being here today, for giving us your time, for sort of walking us through your history and your observations of bathing culture, through your photography, through your experiences and your observations. It's been lovely. As you can see, all of the applause coming up for you right now. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Edo. I love talking to you. I hope we can do it again. And I just want one last thing I wanted to say, because I meant to say it at the very beginning, was I loved what Dalva did yesterday with the opening of her session by doing the chanting, the sauna song that she did, and I just think that by setting what she did was set this space up that I hope we touched a little bit into that space today, because when we talk about sweat and we talk about sauna, we're going into a what I call really one of the most important things that we can be doing in our life today. I truly believe that this is something that can change the world and bring peace. And I'm so excited to have spent this hour with you guys. Thank you so much.